Good evening, welcome to Grand Blanc Township Board Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, November 12th. And with Veterans Day yesterday, I think our only veteran on the board may be Mr. Massey, is that correct?
I am one.
Okay.
I don't know about the others.
All right, I think you're the only one. So
Okay.
please lead us in the pledge.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for an approval of the agenda.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we will go to public comment. We'll start on the left side of the room. If anybody on the left side would like to make a public comment, or on the right side. How about in the back of the room?
I'm good, thank you for asking.
Okay. Seeing there is no public comment, we will close public comment and bring it back here to the board. And at this time, we are going to have a presentation from our DPW Director, Mr. Jeff Sears, regarding the fiscal year 2020 DPW budget. Good evening, Mr. Sears.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I'm excited to present to you our proposed DPW budget for 2020. I do have a short PowerPoint presentation. I'll try and make it short up on the monitors. And then after that, I can answer any questions you guys might have about the budget. First, let's go over our revenues. We have several different types of revenues. As you can see up there, the majority of our revenue is unclassified. And then we have our water department revenue, which is what the money we take in from our, the majority is our sewer department and water department revenue, which basically is obviously our water rates and sewer rates. You'll see we also have unclassified revenue, which is 1.4% of our budget, and then inspections for private development projects, which is only 0.3% of our budget. For 2020, the changes, we don't have very many changes to our revenue streams. For our unclassified revenues, there are none, the same with our inspection. For our water department revenues, we have, I have lowered our predictions for the purchase of water, or the sale of water, basically due to trending in the past few years. I see a little bit of a downward trend from 2017 to 2018 and then so far in 2019, so I did lower that projection just a little bit. We do keep those on the low side so that we can estimate how much it's easier to match our expenses with our revenue when we're lower, basically, to keep that lower. Same with sewer department. We match those revenues from the water department because our revenues in the sewer department are based on the water usage for the year. Also in the sewer department, we have reduced our RTS fees to match our current REU count in that system. And REUs are basically the number of sewer units we purchased from Genesee County. And then in both accounts, you'll see revenue from fund balance, which support CIP projects. To get into our budget and appropriations, our administrative, in each slide I included, and I can email out this presentation to you, just a picture of what each main category in the budget represents dollar-wise. And our administrative side, 43% of the budget is labor. So it's myself, my assistant director, our office staff, and a couple technicians, plus our mechanics. This is our smaller fund inside the water, or the DPW. It has expenses for our vehicles, our insurances, our legal fees, computers, training, memberships, office supplies, just basically all the catch-all that covers both the water and sewer department. Changes to the administrative department are not much. Again, there's contractual increases for wages and benefits. We do have the addition of 2 employees that were transferred to the DPW from the general fund. which includes half of a clerical employee and then our GIS technician. And then we have a decrease in computer services, and that's because I redistributed them throughout the water and sewer department to better match where their expenses should actually be, and you'll see that as we go through the presentation a little bit. There's also an increase in shared administrative costs that I pay the township basically for finance, the superintendent, but it also includes any work the treasurer might do or the clerk might do or Scott might do for me. You'll see an increase in that because we took what I used to pay for the GIS department and we included that all in there into one lump sum. Plus it also matches what came out of the fire department cost of service study when they looked at the township operation as a whole. Also, we're in that fund, our CIP the ask is $300,000 to purchase new equipment and vehicles. It includes 2 dump trucks for 2020. Moving forward in the budget and appropriations, we have inspections. There's no changes to this, just contractual labor increases that we're bound to. And this is really our smallest budget throughout the whole document. For the water department, what that encompasses is mostly the cost of water. So it's 81% of our budget is me buying water from Genesee County. Let's see, for labor is only 3% of this budget. So it's 2 full-time water service technicians. One, all he does is water samples, meter appointments, turn-offs, and the other one is our misdig employee. There are software fees and consulting fees in this budget, as well as utilities for some of our stations, like our water towers and booster stations, materials, and then repair and maintenance of our water system for leaks or fire hydrant painting, anything like that. Also, CIP makes up 12% of this budget. Changes to this budget for this year are, again, contractual wage and benefit increases. I did budget for a decrease in the purchase of water because of the reduction in usage that I'm seeing. Computer contractual services was increased because I did move some from that administrative fund into the water department fund. And then also there's the addition of the Water Smart customer portal, which we're going to be bringing to the board early on in 2020, which we've talked about previously a little bit, I think at maybe a meeting or 2 ago. Also, you'll see an increase to operating supplies, which basically supports more maintenance that we're seeing out in the field. We've been running into more leaky valves, more hydrants that need maintenance and attention. And this is just because our system's getting a little bit older, we're getting a little bit busier, and it's getting bigger too. We're getting more customers, more infrastructures turned over to us every year from private development. In that budget, you'll see capital projects of $954,000 for small water looping projects. This includes one that we've started this year that will carry over into next year. And then a small project on our campus that goes from the police station out to Dordt Highway on the service drive. And that will service Playland in the future, plus create a loop for our campus. For the sewer department, there's 7 full-time sewer technicians, so this is the majority of my technicians are in this department. Our sewer system takes the majority of the maintenance. And that's due primarily to sewer cleaning and televising. That's a 4-person operation all summer long, and spring and fall. We also, obviously the big chunk of there, 55% of the budget is to pay for sewage treatment. So again, that cost goes hand in hand with water usage. Repair and maintenance of the sewer system, contractual services are for like Row Engineering, Potter Consulting, also Liquiforce, who is our lining company who lines our sewer system. And then we also have sewer meter company. The name, Hawk is the name of that. That escaped me for a second, but, and then our CIP, which is 8% of the budget, and that is a $2.5 million water or sewer expansion project and replacement project along the Dort Highway extension. So that's already in the works, it's been approved, and we're just waiting for that to be bid out. Changes to the sewer department budget for 2020, again, it's wages. The cost of treating sewer is decreased due to the water usage that I've decreased. Also, we increased computer contractual services so that we can move some of those expenses from the admin department to the sewer department. Flow monitoring, I decreased that budget to match exact expenditures from 2019 and 2018. And then I increased contractual services to accommodate the design and contract administration for our District 8, 6, and 11 sewer projects, which will be forthcoming to the board soon. The District 8 project is from 2019. That's moving forward in 2020 along with the Dort Highway extension. So this is just a summary of our budget for 2020. I also put in there 2017, 2018, and 2019 so you can kind of compare and contrast. As you can see, our net activity that I have for 2020 is going to be about $84,000, which is a pretty good margin if you ask me. We're matching our expenditures to our rates, which is what we're supposed to do, or matching our rates to our expenditures rather. We're planning what we're going to do for the year and executing it because we have to maintain our water and sewer systems. For capital improvements for 2020 revenue, we have about $500,000 that we're expecting in revenue. That's what we budget pretty much every year. Historically, it's been higher, but I don't ever budget more than $500,000 because I can't tell you if development's going to come to Grand Blanc Township or if it's not. For just as many projects that come here, we've had just as many go elsewhere for various reasons. So $500,000 has been our budget number that we've stuck with, and it's worked out for us. I would rather it be higher than have a shortfall in the end. For 2020, you'll see our capital expenditures proposed for our administration department. We covered this a little bit. $300,000 for 2 dump trucks. We're replacing our older fleet. One is a large snow and ice removal truck. It's current 2002 International. The other is a 2008 Chevrolet dump truck. It's a smaller truck, but it's obsolete. Unfortunately, we can't get parts for it easily anymore. So it's a very valuable piece of equipment. Hopefully we'll be able to switch that out this year. In the water department, again, we have projects carrying over from this year that have already been approved and are in the works right now. They're being constructed currently. We have the small loop on the township campus that's going to service playland property, and then also creates the redundant loop out to Dort Highway. It's another water feed to that District 1 of the water system in case there's ever an outage for whatever reason. And then there's a small water main extension along the Dort Highway extension from Baldwin Road to about where the Genesis Senior Care Facility is, the new one that you see there. And that's really the only water main we'll put in along the Dort Highway extension. And then again in the sewer department is a $2.2 million sewer rehabilitation project and expansion. Basically that's changing out a sewer trunk line that's undersized and reaching its age limit. So that was pretty short, hopefully. Any questions you might have with the budget, I'd be very happy to answer and discuss with you.
Yes, Mr. Massey.
I have a question regarding to the trend for the use of water.
Yes, sir.
And my question, I understand the decrease in the water usage, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, that, my estimate, the water usage is gonna increase next year. So, that's my anticipation.
Okay.
So that will be handled in the next budget.
Yeah, yeah, you mean for 2021, you think it's gonna increase, or 2020?
For 2020, it's gonna increase.
Like the actual amount of water we use or the cost of water?
The actual amount of water we use.
Well, so what I have proposed in this budget that you're seeing now is for all of 2020. If we get an increase, if water usage happens to go up, then that's fine, that's great.
That's part of 2021.
Correct.
Okay, the reason I asked, because, let me be very specific the way I'm thinking, and I think you will agree with me. It's just because the trend, the use of water went down because we got so much rain this summer.
Sure.
Okay, I can say that with confidence. You don't have to agree with me, but I know that. So if we don't get the amount of rain next year, the water usage is gonna go up.
Sure.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and that's why I always try and be kind of conservative with the water usage, because it's okay if we sell more water, but if we don't sell as much as we're expecting, then we could be in a budget crisis.
Now,
at
that
the
was
end of the
something
year.
else.
Yep.
It's probably been on the second or third slide. You remember this number, 501, it was from 501, 510 to 900,000 for something. Not on that, going back, it's probably on the third slide, second or third slide. Right
Right
there.
there. That is our administrative services budget. So again, what that does is, that's the amount the DPW pays the township for our administrative team, our township superintendent, our finance department, any kind of services, the clerk, the supervisor, the treasurer, the township board for that matter, and the GIS and IT department. Those are the services they provide to us in the DPW.
So did the survey that we have MGT, or the
Correct.
study that MGT did?
Yep, and this
Actually
number
outlined.
is based on actual or, the fire department cost of service study that we did. So it's pretty supported number.
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about, I'm familiar with it, but I just want the board to be aware, as I&I.
Sure.
I know at the county level, it's been a discussion item that,
Yeah.
one of the things that the state, I think it's the state, not the feds, are concerned about is that if we have too much more of it at a county level, they're going to start charging, and they right now have the right to start
They do,
charging
yeah.
townships for that. Can you just kind of, and where we're at in comparison to other municipalities with ours?
Sure. I&I is inflow and infiltration, and it has to do with our sewer department. And basically what that is it's stormwater, surface water, rainwater that gets into our sewer system. In our township, I believe we're sitting pretty good because of the investment we've made in our sewer system with the trenchless
And the
repair.
sanitary
In the sanitary sewer system. It's separate from the storm system because we have separate sanitary storm sewer systems here in the township. So because of the investment we've made in our sewer system with the trenchless repair, the liners, the grouting that we've done, we've sealed our sewer system really well, and it's in very good condition. The biggest contributor to our I&I is sump pumps, in my opinion. Sump pumps that are connected to the sanitary sewer system that we probably don't know about. Genesee County does have the right to charge us a fee for excess I&I, and our sewer is metered at different parts in the township, so they do know when we have an influx of water that gets into the sewer system. Right now, there is a permit that's coming down the pipes from the state of Michigan that every sewer system's going to have it's a permit to discharge into the wastewater treatment plant. And the basis of it is that the influx of rainwater that gets into the sewer system overburdens the water treatment plant, which causes the water treatment plant to have to bypass and release sewage into the Flint River, in this case, in heavy rain events. So what the permit is going to do is it's going to regulate everyone a little bit more closely. It's going to make us seal up more of that I&I so that we reduce the amount of water that gets into the sewer system.
How do we compare to other municipalities though with our I&I?
I think we're doing really well. Dan could probably answer that question a little bit better than me because he works for multiple communities. He also works for the county, so he knows what those statistics are.
So in the future though, I'm just pointing out there is a liability.
There is,
Um,
yeah,
If we don't take care of it down the road.
correct.
But they monitor each township, so.
That's right. And
They know which township is producing
yep.
this.
And as this permit unfolds in the next couple of years, the township board will see some projects, hopefully some grant-funded projects to reduce I&I, to disconnect some sump pumps in different subdivisions. And I would rather spend the money on doing projects like those than pay it to Genesee County for having them treat too much rainwater from our sewer system.
Earl and then Joe.
Yeah, didn't we have an I&I, it was a few years back
We
for
did.
Sun Valley,
Yep,
that we had a big amount of money that we spent to go in there and switch a lot of those sump pumps right back out of there.
that's correct. We had
So
a,
that did reduce us, because we were a little bit high, but that reduced us down. I thought it
absolutely.
was better than anyone else, but
Absolutely. And with that project, what we did is we went into homes and we disconnected sump pumps that were connected to the sewer system and ran them out to the ditch or to the storm sewer system where they belong.
that was partially grant and partially loan.
It was partially, it was a matching
Matching
grant.
loan, because I
Correct.
know there was some debt involved with that.
It was bonded out.
And
is
then
what happened.
there was specific instructions, they had to be done a certain way, not the
Yep.
way we wanted it, but whatever the funding mechanism was.
Absolutely.
Are we gonna use that type of system again?
I hope so. Those projects tend to work out. And again, I feel like that's our primary contribution to the stormwater and the sewer system is sump pumps. So that's gonna be my target project.
Right. The only
In the
question
next
I
couple of
had-
years.
Yeah, the only question I had on that is, because I know last time we did that, it wasn't just the sump pumps. I remember seeing bills that we actually, and we couldn't change it, we actually changed service boxes and other things that were not just sump pumps, and it was all part of that system that we couldn't, so there's more than just sump pumps that were changed.
Well, that I can't speak to. That could have been due to the excavation or something that occurred. I'm not sure, and that could have been just, we were excavating there, so we changed those out while we were there. or
So
something.
these are actually in the houses. These are
Oh,
the
okay.
houses. So I was just curious if that was going to occur again, because there was a lot of funds that went to
Absolutely.
each house, and it wasn't just a sump pump and
Right.
whatever. It was like a tremendous amount of money.
Is it a
Absolutely.
voluntary program, Jeff, or is that something that?
Well, it's a grant program is what it is, and you do have to follow the specifications that the grant sets.
But for an
So-
individual resident though, is it mandatory when we go into a neighborhood to do that, or?
Well, that's something we'll have to iron out whenever we get there. Ideally, yes, we want to inspect every home. And there has been, a movement that we should be, every time a house is sold, we should have an inspection of that house to see if it's connected to the sanitary sewer, if there's sump pumps connected. We found several throughout our, just other activities, whether they're water meter appointments or helping somebody find a leak. We found them before, so there are movements out there that we do that, but it should be mandatory, absolutely.
Mr. Massey?
But I had a question, now I have to change my question.
Sure.
Simply because what I'm hearing from you, if I'm correct, if I'm not, please correct me. You're telling me that the township in the past made a mistake. Listen at me very carefully before you said no, Kathy. I'm sort of rephrasing what you said. If you came to my house and you saw, talking about my house, and you saw that my sub pump was connected up inefficiently, incorrectly,
Illegally.
illegally. Now, I have a new home. So that tells me the township didn't do what it's supposed to have done when that new home was built. That's what that tells me.
No,
What happened then?
the majority of the connections that we find are done after the homes are built well after, and they're almost always in older homes, older subdivisions that we go into. Like Wishing Well across the street, those homes were all built in the 60s and 70s, and they were all connected. Those are people that had tiles that might have went outside for their sump pump and then it failed over the years, and instead of having a contractor come in and install a new tile, they just had, came over and Joe Schmo hooked it up to the sanitary sewer, because that's the easiest place for it to go for them. But that's nothing that would occur on a new home, certainly nothing that we would allow. We have pretty thorough inspections on new homes before they're allowed to live there.
But you stated something that I don't quite understand.
Okay.
How can you prevent excess water getting into the sewer, rainwater? That's sort of,
We're talking, because it's confused, our township
Correct.
separates storm
Correct.
water from
It's
sewer.
it's a separate, we have separate sewers in our township. It's a separate storm sewer system from our sanitary sewer system.
yes,
So
We have
it
two.
should be separate.
yes.
The majority of the rainwater that we get in our sanitary sewer system comes from people's sump pumps. We do have, right now, we just went through all of our manholes and inspected all of our sewer manholes. We had a few that have infiltration in them, that have maybe some hairline cracks, have a bad lid or something that we're gonna fix. That's the other contribution of stormwater into the sewer system. But the majority of it is sump pumps. So if we can eliminate those connections by doing inspections and a grant program to help those people pay for that disconnection, then that's our best avenue to take.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've taken care of a lot of the other issues that some municipalities have, and that's the
Correct.
grouting of the joints of the sewer
Correct.
and the lining of it where there's cracks. And the water can get
Absolutely.
in. So we're
We're-
probably, are we gonna continue doing that?
Absolutely, we'll keep doing it, and we're getting ready to go through our third pass to the township right now, lining and grouting our sewer system, so it's
That's
in,
another 50 years of life or whatever.
absolutely.
But Jeff, I see every year that, I don't know which company it is that you guys hired to do that kind of work.
Yep, Liquid Force.
Okay, so how long does it take Liquid Force to do the entire township?
We clean the sewer system in the entire township once every 5 years. It takes us 5 to 6 years to get through the entire township to clean it, and they repair whatever we clean every year.
Oh, okay,
So what we do is after we clean it, we televise it, and then we send them our videos.
okay.
They evaluate it, send us back a report, and then we go through their report and determine what is actually gonna be fixed and what's not.
So I'm just curious, how do you repair it without digging?
What they do is they have equipment that puts a liner through. It's a fabric liner that they send down through the sewer, and then there's an emulsifier that goes on that liner and it hardens.
Oh, okay.
And it just creates a lining on the inside of the pipe. And then there's another machine that goes to joints and it sprays a grout type of material on the joints that are leaking, and then that firms up like concrete.
I only bring this up because it has the potential in
It
some
does.
municipalities of
Correct.
costing a fortune.
Right.
It sounds like our township, with all the work we've been doing with Liquid Force, it's going to limit our liability in those terms. I just wanted to confirm that.
Absolutely.
The other, I asked Mr. Sears to take a look at a friend of mine's water bill from a neighboring municipality today, because he said his water rates doubled. They're
Right. That's interesting.
increased substantially, and I had no idea what was going on in that municipality with their water, but turns out that it was about, what, 30 or 40% increase.
It was shocking to see, and I had heard that was happening, but to actually see one of those bills was quite alarming for such a small amount of usage.
It's my understanding they had a rate study, but really hadn't followed it in the past,
It's true.
and so now it's catching up with them. They had to make the increase all at once.
Absolutely.
El's down there.
Okay, Mr. Mansour?
Thanks. Evening.
Hey,
So a couple of things here, actually more than a couple of things.
sure.
But this increase from 500,000 to almost $1 million, I don't think we're hiring more people, I don't think we're doing more, so that would mean that there would be offsetting reductions in other budgets, right? If you're taking it on, then someone else's budget would offset by that, right?
Well, what that is it's not necessarily we're taking it on. We're paying our fair share of the cost,
Right,
really.
but so someone else has been,
If you mean someone else in the general funds,
yes.
I can't necessarily speak to that. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, Al.
But, I mean, if you're picking up an extra $460,000.
Right. And
We're not
part of
hiring,
that,
like 10 more people.
part of that is we used to pay for GIS and IT separately also, and
Yep.
that's included in here now. So that's all lumped together now, where they used to be separate administrative charges. So now it's all lumped together in that 969 also.
But there ought to be some reduction somewhere to offset that. I'll follow up on that as the other
Sure,
budget.
Dennis would probably be able to answer that better.
Let me see, so, the vehicles that were here, you went through a list of them, and the one that you're actually talking about replacing, the 2002 International dump truck,
Correct.
is actually on the list for $200,000 for this year. So I guess, is there a new schedule or a new budget proposal? Because seems to be some inaccuracy.
Unless it's a typo in my schedule that I have in 2020, $230,000. In 2019, we did replace one. We bought a new truck.
Right, so was that the one that?
That's the 2002 International dump. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a 2003 International dump that
Yeah,
we're
okay.
replacing, not 2002.
Got it.
That's
So-
correct.
So that lines up, and so that's the 230,000, and the other one, the 2008 one, you're actually replacing a 2009 GMC
Correct.
dump truck,
Yeah,
right?
that's my clerical error there.
Okay. In the overall budget, I think for your department, you requested about $19 million and change.
Oh.
So the report that I have, it's over 20 million, so maybe there's been a reissue of this.
There was a new budget that was put on the dais for everybody
Okay,
3
maybe
weeks
I
ago, I think.
didn't pick the up to
October
latest one.
10th.
Yeah,
Is that?
on October 10th is the date on that budget.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
revised.
I apologize, I thought everybody had
I,
one.
you know, okay.
I got you. Pass this down there.
Yeah. I did notice in a couple of areas, for instance, and I'm not sure if it actually changed in this, but there are increases, for instance, in, under the sewer area for wages, for instance, of about 5.5%, 20 over 2019. And then retiree pension expense increases about
Okay.
2%.
So, part of the,
Well, let me but in other places, it looks like we have like a 10% increase in pension expense. So I guess, wouldn't those kind of go up together?
part of that is the employees that are in those budgets. Some of them are newer employees, so as they get the baseline cost of living increase, and then they also have step increases.
Okay.
One of the new employees in there has an actual pension, so that's probably where the 10% increase comes from, or has the employee health care and everything. The other ones do not have that benefit. They have the employee health savings plan.
Okay. So we
But
have a new employee that would have that pension benefit?
No, I'm sorry, it's not, it's the employee, the retirement health care plan. Yeah, it's an existing employee that transferred to the DPW. He was a 15-year employee mechanic, transferred to the DPW 3 years ago. So he's getting step increases still until he gets to the top level of pay.
Okay.
shouldn't get into what, health?
Correct, we're not gonna get into healthcare and stuff.
But it's it's not anyone that we've given a new pension to?
Absolutely,
It's just moving
no.
within the?
Correct.
In the township?
Correct.
I'll go through this other one, but thank you, but that's
Absolutely,
it.
no
Thanks.
problem.
I just have a question. Can you go through the section that talks about the new building? Because I know at one point in time, we were going to get a new building for just the
Absolutely.
mechanics, but now we're actually getting a new office building, which means your staff's going to be over there instead of being in this
Well,
building, right?
It's very preliminary still, on what we're actually gonna build. We bought the property, we're getting ready to, I'm in the middle of writing an RFP
Right.
for a design build contract.
But in that, it says DPW building
Correct.
as well, and it doesn't say actually mechanics, it just says DPW
No,
building and fire department.
Because we talked about whenever we bought Playland, that we had insufficient space for the DPW department itself in the current barns that we have. So when we bought Playland,
Right.
we were gonna build a new DPW facility along with the fire department on that
Well,
property.
all that's gonna have to come before the board before we even move on, so, I mean,
Well,
this is,
the only reason I bring it up is because he's gonna do an RFP on something that it's not at that stage yet. How are we gonna do an RFP if it's before it's even been approved by the board?
I don't know that we are yet.
Yeah, right here.
Well, we're gonna do an RFP, I mean, we did the study, the space needs assessment that was presented to the board on what the DPW needed, what the fire department needed in a new building. And I thought the discussion for that was at that point,
I'd have to
when
take
we
a look and
discussed
see.
on how to move forward.
Yeah, I just didn't know, where those people are, why we needed that new building. That's why I wanted you to go through it.
Sure, and we can do that. The space needs assessment, whenever we completed that, determined that the amount of space the DPW occupies right now is far less than what we actually need to operate out of, because we're spread out into 3 different barns. And even with those 3 different barns, we're busting at the seams as it is right now. And it doesn't account for all the growth that's coming in the township. So we decided that the best avenue to accommodate the DPW, how we're growing, how the mechanics garage is growing, was to build a new DPW facility and move the mechanics into our existing facilities. And then we'll still have the other barns for storage for a future Parks and Rec department, for the police department. But the new DPW facility would accommodate our technicians in the administrative department. So, and that's basically to free up space in this department, to free up, to get the mechanics out of the space that they're in, currently connected to Township Hall, and then to house the DPW technicians.
Right, so once we vacate the mechanics, we got all that space for DPW to have offices in there, right? Because you're vacating that and they're going to their own facility. That's what I thought it was just the
Well,
building.
they would be converted really to storage for the township,
Mr. Chair,
because we just don't have space as it is
Mr.
now.
Massey?
let me ask the question. I'm a little confused here. Is the treasurer's question in the budget?
This is actually not a budgeted expense for this year. I don't have any expenses budgeted related to a DPW facility for this year.
What's the cost?
There's talks of studying it and writing the RFP for a building, but there's no expenses in the budget for that. Because we don't anticipate that to happen for several more years.
I don't have his budget, but I had his comments from his notes that said, that they're gonna do this RFP.
Correct.
for the building.
It's in our
I thought it
goals.
was just strictly the mechanics building. I didn't think it was gonna be an office facility. I know we talked about
We're not at
office
that
facility.
point yet, but.
Yeah, there will be far more discussions on this, and we are gonna be including the DPW committee of the township board to be part of those
Yeah, I
discussions
mean, before
also.
we can have a discussion, we gotta see what
Correct.
costs might be and all that
Correct.
stuff. We can't consider it unless we know what that
Well,
is.
yeah, but I
It's
just,
not gonna cost us anything to get
well, you're
proposals.
gonna, but you've got the study. I thought the study was just for the building, just for mechanics, but now it's not just mechanics,
No,
now it's.
The study was
and
for the whole
office.
township
The-
campus.
Right.
For
The,
this building, your
yeah,
office, everything. The
correct.
study covered everything. Al, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as we move forward in this, we'll probably want to see a current utilization
Absolutely.
footprint now,
Yeah.
and kind of how we migrate over time to.
And those renderings are all in the space needs assessment. I don't know if the board all got copies on that or not.
I did.
We had a presentation, but it's been some time ago, so we'll
Yes.
obviously, throughout those discussions, have to refresh
Update those.
everybody's memories and rehash this all out again, because it's a pretty big decision to make to move forward with something like that, and obviously everybody has to be on board.
Yeah, that was my question. Go ahead.
Sure. So, adding all these other departments, which building were you talking about putting Parks and Rec in?
What I was talking about is storage for future Parks and Rec. If we were to build a new facility, we would have extra room in our pole barns out there
And speaking of Parks and Rec, have you had an opportunity, did you like that segue?
Yeah, thanks.
Speaking of Parks and Rec, have you had an opportunity to look at our needs out there and the employees? Because I noticed the employees,
Yeah, I wanna reserve that discussion as far as Parks and Rec and employees and all that for. I don't
well,
know.
this would be the time for the budget. I just
Well,
want
we
to,
haven't
have
determined
you,
what we're doing on it yet. I know,
Okay.
we're working on some things
Okay.
and I don't wanna go down that road right now.
okay,
All right, thanks, Mr. Thomas.
you're welcome.
Ms. Lane?
There was mentioned by Mr. Lehman that he's considering moving the GIS department into the DPW.
One employee, our GIS analyst, will move into the DPW cost center. And I don't want to speak for Dennis, but it's a shift in focuses into the IT department. Some moves that are maybe forthcoming in the future, not decided upon or for sure, as far as I know. But I really don't want to speak to any decisions he may have made, or I don't have that
Is
information.
Yeah,
that
that's-
position in your budget?
It is in my budget for 2020, correct?
That clarifies my question.
Anything else for Mr. Sears?
No, sir.
We appreciate your presentation. Mr.
Absolutely.
Sears.
Thank you.
Oh, he took all
When we're at the water rate study, that's underway or?
We were really hoping to have a first draft of the water rate study. We did reach out to them and get an update this week, and they're very close, but they're not quite ready yet. Hopefully in the coming week, we'll have the first draft, or next week, and then we can have a meeting with them to go over the first draft once I have time to review it. But I would say at the very latest, the end of January, hopefully we'll have that done and the findings presented to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to the Thursday agenda to review that. We'll be approving some minutes. We have a consent agenda with Mr. Guzek's treasurer report. We'll have, if anybody has any questions for Mr. Guzek at this time.
I have a couple of questions, but I guess they're mostly budget questions that I'll just wrap up and send to Director Salvati if that's, or Shostak rather.
Yeah, Kathy Sostek,
Kathy
yes.
Sostek, yeah.
Okay. Item B, the board will consider a motion to approve a contract with Gray's Tree Service for an amount of $14,000 to complete off-road sewer brush clearing, mowing, and authorize Township Superintendent or Supervisor to execute all related contracts and estimates. Any questions, Mr. Sears, on that? Okay, seeing none. Under operational issues, board will consider a resolution to authorize the issuance of special assessment bonds for Green Valley subdivision. We've talked about this in the past and pretty much ready to move forward on the bonding. Is that correct, Mr. Laddie?
We are. In fact, last month we amended the assessment roll down, fortunately, and the final amount of that roll is $326,568.79. And you can see in the bond resolution that we're proposing to borrow an amount not to exceed $327,000. This resolution was prepared by bond counsel at Dickinson Wright, and what it will do is allow him to move forward with securing the funds through cooperative efforts with our treasurer, and hopefully that will be resolved very shortly.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, I know we're gonna touch on a roads policy, but a little late in the game on this one, but going forward, I'd kinda, on these smaller dollar items, there could be an opportunity to fund these out of our, our general fund or some other available money we may have, and actually make more back on that investment than we are currently.
You're exactly right. In fact, we created a fund where we can put money aside for special assessment projects, and we can loan that money out at a rate not to exceed 5%. And so it's and I think the idea that, I mean, this project, in terms of the scope of these projects expense-wise is relatively small, so that's a good option for us in the future. And right off the bat, we'd save several $1,000s on bond fees. And
So
so,
the residents pay currently.
right, so it may turn out that our interest rate may be slightly above what a tax-free interest rate would be from a bond, but when you add administrative costs in on these smaller projects, I think it would turn out to be better for the residents also.
Did we discuss that? I don't know if it was this project or another one this past year, it seems like.
We have discussed it in the past. In fact, I think we did it on a project a while ago, but it seems to be time to revive. So let's kind of dust off what we did in the past and then take a look at whether we want to fund that amount and begin to do that on smaller projects. And it's interesting because you'll see later in the agenda, we just had a discussion about special assessment projects. And while we've brought to you a policy that's ready to adopt if you deem it complete, we're always happy to go back to the drawing board and look at that element of it also.
So what, through
Go ahead,
you,
Mr. Thomas.
Attorney Laddie, what's the next step on how we can generate this and use it for this project, for example?
We can't use it for this project, just because we're already going out to, you're gonna adopt this bond resolution, it's already committed to, essentially.
Well, how do we do it for the next small?
Well, it's real easy. All we have to do is we just adopt a resolution to fund that account in a certain amount of money, and I would say, for example, this one's $326,000. If you want to put $400,000 or so earmarked for this account, then we're ready to go on it. It's already been created, it just has to be funded.
Supervisor Bennett, maybe you can take a consensus on Thursday of the board if we wanted to do a resolution on this?
Well, I believe, is it on a case-by-case basis?
We could do it on a case-by-case basis. What we need to do just is have the foresight, when we see a project coming to us and we're considering funding options, we just have to, in the early stages, maybe even in the creation of the district, or even with the confirmation of the role, we just throw in another resolution saying, let's move some money over to this already existing fund and bypass bond.
Because we actually have to make a motion to go out for a bond, right?
Correct.
So instead of making a motion to go out for a bond,
Transfer.
we say,
Yep.
hey, instead of going out for a bond, I want to explore, us financing it, and then we avoid that. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I have some concerns about that.
about the township financing a project?
Yes. My number one concern is when you say small. And my question to the board tonight or to the attorney, what is small?
I'm thinking anything less than $1 million.
You got my vote. Now we'll establish what small is.
Okay. There's one now.
Yeah, Mr. Mansour?
So obviously getting 5% or something like that is much better than the 1.8 or whatever we're now. But we have to take into concern, I guess, the liquidity aspect. So we could comfortably create a fund up to, I don't know, what, $1, $2, $3 million, and then we'd have to kind of cap it there.
Right. Sure, we could do that. And here's the thing that we got into this discussion last time. We've had sort of an overriding strategy to try to pay down our OPEB obligations. And so when we take money and we fund the special assessment, while the rate of return is a good rate of return for an investment, you have to figure out what your opportunity cost would be to reduce OPEB. And sort of that's what you'd be balancing off of, I would think. But again, the other thing, the tipping point might be the savings to the residents, because if you can cut out $6,000 in bond fees and also make 3 or 4%, maybe that's an additional benefit that will cause you to forego the OPEB.
If it only could be general fund, I could see where, you'd be balancing it against the OPEB, but if we could use other funds are going to be invested anyways, we're going to have our investment committee's been working on that with Mr. Guzak, that we're gonna have a pretty good, clear picture of the cash flow analysis of what's available for investment and what we need for cash flow purposes.
Well, that would be another element to it, because we want to find out, I mean, again, we want to find out if it just has to be general fund money, if it could come from other sources, because, again, if we're generating a competitive rate of interest, maybe that could come from another source, but that's a question for our finance department.
Mr. Massey?
Well, I'd like the board to think about, we need a policy for that. I would, just for talking purposes right now, I would like for the attorney to work on a policy for that.
Sure,
Can we-
happy to do that.
Is there a consensus to have Mr. Massey? Or
What I
Mr.
should say.
Well, a policy that would allow us to do it, but, I mean, we can choose on a timely basis, I mean, have a policy so if we do choose to.
I am absolutely for it, and I think it's a great idea, and I know that folks on this side of the table have been really pushing hard for this, but I'd like to hear from the treasurer and see what he thinks.
Well, I'd like to see the cash flow first back, because right now we have a different strategy that we're using. So it just depends on how much excess cash is out there, and we have to consider all the things that we're doing in the future. Because it's a great idea, you know, we can make a higher rate of return, but like Mr. Laddie said, if we want to fund our OPEB, which we do want to do, we don't want to put too much out there. But it's a delicate balance, so it's something that the cash flow analysis is going to have to tell us. And as at this point, we haven't heard from them to say what percentage is going to go long-term, what's going to be short-term, but.
But Mr. Treasurer, I understand very clearly what you're saying, but the only thing I'm saying, we need a policy in place. So when we reach, when we
Oh,
get
that's
to
fine,
your,
yeah, right.
when we get to your concern, we have a policy in place.
Well, you can set the policy up, I'm just saying
The,
my concerns, that's all.
and I apologize.
Just like you have
Yeah.
concerns.
Mr. Thomas brought it up first, as far as the thought, I understand now a little bit better, but I thought we're just if we're going to do it or not, but the details to, if we do decide to do it. It might be something that our investment committee takes a look at and just explores that with Ms. Solstack, because it'll be a policy that will say, you know, what are we comfortable with? What kind of dollar limits? Also, you know, there might be a few other things too we want to clarify.
Well, I'll write something up and send it to Mr. Lehman, and he can vet
We
it through his processes.
Right.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah, I agree to that, Trent.
Okay. So we will put together a policy and look at it. Item B, the board will consider a resolution to authorize the updated Grand Blanc Township Support Emergency Operations Plan, EOP, in conjunction with the Genesee County and State of Michigan Emergency Management Agencies. This is something that we didn't necessarily put out there in the public just because there's some confidential information in it, but it's something that, I don't know, Chief, would you like to, either Chief, I don't know, I think both of you are heavily involved, but maybe you can explain where this comes from and the need for it, what have you.
The support EOP, or Emergency Operations Plan, is a plan the township has had in place for several years. This is nothing new. It's not a new plan. What is new is the document itself. It is an updated template of the plan. Usually, what we have to do is we have to review and update the plan every 4 years, or when we have a new township CEO, or in this case supervisor. The only reason we're doing it now is because of the updated plan itself, the new template to the plan. So we decided, let's just do it now, get it over with, and then in 4 years, or should we happen to get a new township supervisor, we'll make any necessary changes in the future. Basically what it is, it defines roles and responsibilities should the township have an emergency. And when I say emergency, I don't mean an armed robbery or something. I mean something catastrophic. A tornado comes to the township. We have a drastic fire through a neighborhood or something that takes out several homes. We have severe flooding, something like that. Who's responsible for what, who does what, and when does it get done? One of the advantages to having the plan is if we do have one of those catastrophic emergencies, it allows the township to possibly get federal funding, state of Michigan funding, to help deal with that catastrophic emergency.
Who puts together the template that we have for that?
The template comes from the state of Michigan.
Do we amend it at all?
We do. We do. A lot of it is fill in the blank type stuff because it talks about roles and responsibilities, who in the township is responsible for what portion of the plan.
So,
Mr. Mansur?
so I haven't seen the resolution. It wasn't in our package, as far as I know. And I guess, what is there to actually,
I thought it was,
What's that?
Trust me. Trust me.
okay.
Do you want to forward that to me and I'll forward it to the board?
We can certainly do that.
Okay.
it's not in the board package?
All right.
The other thing is, I think this is I mean, we'll look at it, so it sounds like it's a standard thing, good thing to do. But I also think we ought to, just kind of using that as a launch point, we ought to make sure we have a similar document for roles and responsibilities inside the township. If something happens to one of our key employees, you know, how those roles filter out.
Yeah, and I think,
State statute outlines that pretty clearly.
yeah, I know within the police department, we do have that policy in place. Should we have something happen within our township municipal buildings, whether it's the police department or this building,
Well,
to...
this is more along the lines of, you know, if we have a superintendent that's out for an indeterminate amount of time, I mean, he has certain responsibilities. that
Oh,
he has to
absolutely, absolutely.
Your little red book, actually, I've got copies of it, that it actually outlines who those responsibilities fall to. The superintendent actually acts at the discretion of the supervisor. And so in the absence of the supervisor, those responsibilities, or in the absence of the
the
superintendent,
supervisor.
those responsibilities go to the supervisor.
Well, I mean,
What happens after that one?
In the
I would have to
absence
look-
of the
It's all-
supervisor, the clerk's in charge.
Right.
So you want to
And then
protect
the
him.
clerk leaves it to the board to, for example, if I'm not here for a meeting, the clerk starts the meeting and then the board votes on who's going to run things.
that's what I thought.
Per state law.
Okay. Anybody, we'll make sure that resolution gets out to everybody on the board.
It's not the resolution, it's the document itself.
It's the resolution.
I think it's a resolution.
Yeah.
It says resolution right on the agenda.
Yeah.
And again, it's just because it might have sensitive information, right?
Right,
So,
that's the only reason it wasn't in the board packet.
yeah, send it to me and I'll forward it to them.
Sounds good.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item C. The board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of 30 new tactical plate carriers trauma plate vests for the patrol division in the amount of $11,473.50 and authorize township superintendent or supervisor to execute all related contracts and agreements. Chief, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the police department, we spend a lot of time developing and training officers to deal with situations they may encounter when they're out patrolling the township and serving the residents. However, once they get outside the confines of the walls, we have very little control of what they do and what they run into. So we want to make sure we have equipment capable of keeping our residents and keeping our officers safe. These tactical trauma plate vests they're not the ballistic vests that I'm wearing now. They're in addition to this. Our current vests that law enforcement wear on their bodies day in and day out, they will stop most handgun rounds. Anything higher ballistic power, these vests will not stop. So if you have an active shooter situation that we see across the country, or barricaded gunmen and they have a higher capacity weapon than a handgun, these vests are useless. So the tactical plates, tactical carriers trauma plates are something the officer would slip on over top of their uniform should they be responding to one of those incidents. It will stop those higher caliber rounds so they can effectively deal with that situation safely.
Mr. Massey and then Ms.
I
Lane.
have a question. How often do you guys check your vest? And what type of mechanism you use to check your vest?
Yeah, so they are checked daily by the officer, because they put them on every day. They check the straps around them, make sure that this still fits properly. What we do is we partner with the Department of Justice. They have a grant available to all law enforcement throughout the country where it's a 50-50 pay grant. We pay half the cost of a grant of the vest. They pay the other half of the vest. We replace all our vests every 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Lane?
Chief?
Yes.
With this particular purchase, is it in your budget or is it coming out of capital?
It is out of capital. It's planned for in capital.
Capital?
Capital.
Who was that?
Yes, would it be okay if we added the name CHMP Distributors to our agenda, so at least, because it does reference, it says we're gonna buy 11,000, but could we reference the supplier in our agenda? Would that be okay, Mr. Laddie?
If the board, if you don't have a problem with that request, is that just for bookkeeping?
Oh, yeah, it's a lot
Purpose.
easier, because that way you've got approval that comes through and it says, okay, it should be CHMP, but
No.
if he changes the supplier later on, it would cause a problem. That's why I'm saying they might have left it that way.
I don't go.
Any
It
problem
doesn't matter.
with it, Chief?
No problem with
Stick it on
me.
there.
It's pretty inexpensive.
It is. When I priced these two, this was planned for. A couple years ago, we put this in motion and started getting some prices, and we thought it would be much more expensive than this. CMP Distributors really came through with a very good price for these
Mr.
this
Mansur?
equipment.
So you mentioned grants, so is part of, I mean, this is like less than $400. So is it part of it offset by this grant?
This particular purchase is not. What is offset is the ballistic vest officers wear
Yes.
on a daily basis.
So where would you store these? Within the different cars, or how
They
do people get them?
they're going to be assigned to officers and patrol sergeants, so everyone will have their own. They have a little bag that they're stored in. In our cruiser garage, we have lockers set up for the officers to put their bags, their riot helmets, all the larger equipment. So they'll put them in their car, they'll be with them throughout their shift.
Okay, any questions on that? Next item is also for Chief. I think the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase or replacement AEDs, automatic external defibrillators, for marked cruisers, 17 of them, police department, 3 of them, government center, 1, and that's a total of 21 full units equaling $25,000 and $25,002. Chief, how old are they right now, the ones we have?
The ones we have now, we purchased in 2012.
So I imagine they're at the end of their life, or?
They are.
Okay. Ms. Lane?
Again, for auditing purposes in the minutes, we need to know, is it from your budget or from capital?
It is capital.
Mr. Cruzak?
Yeah, and would it be okay if we added the team life to that
Absolutely.
document?
For sure.
No.
So a 5-year life on these things, pretty much?
Yeah, the current units we have now, they've been really good to us. We got to replace a battery once in a while, replace some pads after use, which is normal. However, the units we have now, they're aging, they're getting older. They are starting to nickel and dime a little bit, plus they're not going to service these units anymore in the very near future, which is why we were able to get some bit of a return in value, $300 per unit, towards the price of these units. They do have a little bit of life, but not very much left.
Well, last thing we want is somebody going out and
Absolutely.
not working, you know? Any other thoughts on that? Yes?
Mr. Supervisor, to the chief, they have a defibrillator at the senior center. Can you check that out and make sure that it's within the range as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a question, that's but
Mr.
Clerk
Mason?
raised a question.
Yeah.
Who provided it to the senior center?
I think there was a fundraiser or something over there. Wasn't
think that should
provided
be
by the
question.
township board, but again, there are things that happen that the fire department or the chief could check on
Should be.
just for safety over there, that a regular person like you and I wouldn't be listening or watching for it aging, so.
The fire department has several of your own, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have this unit already.
Mr.
Yes.
Supervisor, it would make me think if that's important, which I believe that it is important, that should be some kind of schedule set up where the departments, the fire department or the police department, check it out every 6 months or once a year, because I don't want something to malfunction and we get blamed and we never had a full discussion about who is responsible.
Right, and I can tell you, the police department AEDs, we check those, the officers check them daily before they get in their car, but our AED instructor checks them monthly to make sure that they're operational. I would assume the fire department has a similar program. Clerk Lane, without you telling me, I would have no idea that the senior center has an AED, so I don't know who's responsible for that.
Parks and Rec Commission. Maybe we should vote on it.
I wonder if the library has one.
I don't know.
The schools, do they have
They
them?
should vote on it.
I mean,
Yes, they should deal with it.
the schools have them. I mean, everybody
Well,
has them.
Yeah, we
Schools
don't-
are
they're not our
bigger
employees, it's not our
organizations.
The library too, I mean.
Right, and they're under the control of more regular people like all of us, rather than
Well, the
having a
library's
big.
under the operation of GDL, and the senior center's under the operation of
Parks
Parks and
Parks
Rec.
Rec Commission,
Yep,
so
So-
they'd have to vote on it.
they'd have to go into executive session though.
All right,
Thank
you,
for
Chief.
doing that.
yeah, thanks. As far as replacement on those though, Chief, I mean, we have a capital replacement for police cars or whatever, and I imagine
We do.
these are on there as well, that AEDs are somewhere that every 5 years we replace those.
Correct. We don't have a plan out every 5 years, but this was planned for 2 to 3 years ago, knowing that we need them, replace them now.
All right, item E, had emailed out to the board, just wondering if there's any need to have Kathy Sostak here from our finance director to talk about the budget. I didn't get any emails. She's available Thursday if we want her at the meeting, but before I ask her to come, I want to make sure we have questions for her. But, we still have a little bit of time before we need to approve it, so hopefully everybody's taking a look through it. And I guess I would just say, take another look through the thing. We still have a couple of meetings yet to go. We're going to have to put it on the agenda, Mr. Laddie, for
I think December will be on your agenda.
the December agenda.
Thursday.
So we still have November yet. Okay. Next item that we have on the agenda is the board will review the streets and roads policy. We emailed that out to everybody. Our roads committee couldn't meet last week. We met on Monday, yesterday. And that consists of Mr. Massey, Miss Lane, myself. Mr. Laddie was there, as well as Mr. Sears. And in future meetings, we may have, we're probably bringing the road commission as well as row engineering to talk about a few things. We spent quite a bit of time going through the draft. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it. I've got printed copies if anybody needs a copy of it. But Mr. Laddie, would you like to talk about it a little bit, or?
Well, yeah, and you pointed out we had a good discussion, and there were items that we still need to have future discussion on, and I'm figuring that committee will continue to do that. And one of them, for example, could be, we touched on the financing issue a little bit. We touched on scope of projects, like whether or not projects were going to be full rebuilds or whether they were going to be something less than that. We talked about ways to streamline the estimate process to speed it up from Genesee County Road Commission. And so, but where we landed ultimately was the committee agreed to put forward this policy as it's currently written to cover public roads that are under the supervision and control of the Road Commission, and lay out the process for people to begin the petition process, to come to the township board and try to figure out the scope of work and things like that. And we tried to make sure that we covered issues or questions that have come up recently in the past. For example, we talked about, and we put in the policy, that if through the petition process or even through the special assessment process, if a scope of work changes, if prices change, if there's some other unforeseen circumstance that we may be amending the process for a special assessment district. And I'll give you the best example is our Thrush Drive discussion, where we had the scope of the project change. And so things like that, recent events were on our minds when we went through and tried to make this process or this policy as user-friendly as possible. It only applies to public roads. The committee talked about the idea of in an ongoing capacity, talking about private roads, what the benefits and drawbacks will be for people with associations in private roads. But the committee didn't have any recommendation to change your current policy to not have special assessment districts for private roads, but they're open to ongoing discussion. And so, for example, if you want them to continue that discussion, that's perfectly fine to do. That's not in this policy. So I think from a public road standpoint, this policy is ready for adoption. If you agree, if you have questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. And also our committee members are here as well.
One of the things that we wanted to do, and every week we get more people inquiring about their roads, and every week that we wait we had a similar type thing. I'm glad we met on it because we made a number of changes, but we want to make sure we can be clear to people, and I think we need to get this thing out so that when somebody comes in, it clearly defines for an individual that is interested in doing their roads how the process works. We also have Mr. Sears as the go-to person that they meet with first to determine the scope of the work. One of the things that when somebody comes in, whether it's Warwick or whatever, Green Valley, there may be other projects that we have coming down the road that he can say, hey, you know what, Consumers Energy has a gas line coming through there, or we have a major sewer project. You may want to hold off a year. All those infrastructure things fall into it, that he'll be able to take a look at that scope of work. But it clearly sets up, and Jeff not being an elected official, he's going to make sure that this is what the board is saying that we're going to do, this is what they're going to be told that we can do, and then from there it follows the process. If they go to the petition level, what have you. So I think it makes it clear. We've even talked about putting this in a brochure form so that we have other brochures that when somebody comes in and they want to put a driveway in, it spells it out, how the culverts have to work, the width, how it meets up with the county road, what have you. And this would be very similar, but I think it's important that we have something we can actually hand to people and say, this is the process that we follow in having a road done. And I think we need to make sure we're speaking with one voice when it comes to roads and streets and how they get done. And this will do it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Jeff, Director Jeff, has an assistant. When he's not around, his assistant will be in charge. Just so we have a clear understanding of that when Jeff is not here.
So when somebody comes in the office and wants a road done, they're directed to Mr. Sears, this policy, and if he's not in, is what Mr. Massey's saying, is he has an assistant that will meet with them or talk with them and schedule a meeting. If he's not in, we've got front desk people at the DPW that will be glad to set up a time to meet. Mr. Manser?
So a couple of things. We talked a little bit about the threshold of accepting special assessment district. Right now, it says 51%. Did the committee have any discussion about that level of approval versus higher level, 60 or something, just to kind of?
We did not. We stuck with 51% of the linear frontage of the length of the road proposed in the district. We did not talk about any amount other than 51%.
We talked about the state statute that requires that, right?
Right.
Is that what they require?
Right.
Or?
They require 51%.
At a minimum.
At a minimum.
Right.
Right.
Now, what we've seen in the past sometimes is from petition signing to presentation to public hearing, we find people kind of moving in and out of the for or against category. And so I think in the past there's been some suggestion that if you can do more than 51%, that would be better, because people may fall away or change their mind.
I'd like to actually codify that while we're busy doing this, because, right now, the couple failure modes that happened with this thrush and robin issue is, yes, the scope change, and I would like to look a little bit, it wasn't clear to me how the scope change, does that reset the clock for these people in terms of a new petition? But also, it would seem that if it was a good idea for the neighborhood, you ought to be able to get more than 50 plus 1.
Right. Now, in Ms. Lane's voice is hindered tonight, but I know that you have said on occasion on an informational basis that the township prefers something in the mid 50% range, 55.
54% or higher.
Now, we recognizing the state's 51%, we could put in parentheses, the township board prefers and approval rating somewhere in the mid-50s or higher. Is that something that the board would like to see in there?
My only concern is for the people, the individuals that are going out getting the signatures. I mean, I spoke with one of the individuals that gathered the signatures for the Thrush Drive area, and they told me how many hours they spent going out. If we told them, well, the bar's got to be a little bit higher, they would have said, forget it. We've spent so much time now getting signatures that if you tell us we got to get even more, then we're not going to do it. And while I think for the township board it's good that, hey, we got some wiggle room there, I don't want to place any higher of a burden on the people out getting the signatures is my only concern. Ms. Lane?
This whole procedure is only being done in Grand Blanc Township because when I became clerk in 2008 and they didn't have this procedure, everybody came here and asked all the questions, and so that's why the road commission was cooperative in helping me start this kind of procedure. And I think it's better to let them know up front, as I always do, we prefer the 54%, because none of you have sat here for hours with a room full of people and some saying, well, I want my name off, I want my name off. You drop below 51%, then you frustrated everybody. If you have the 54% or 55%, we had almost 60% when we did Concord Green. So I think...
I've sat here through those meetings. But anyways, so I mean, we could look at adding prefer or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so think about it for Thursday, and we can do it on the fly. If you want to say, again, the township prefers, or a higher percentage is recommended, or something like that. Something non-binding, but gives them direction.
Insert it in
Sure that
there,
we get
obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Insert it in. It'll be there.
Yeah, so we can ensure that at the end that we get
Yes.
Okay.
51%.
Mr. Atkins had his hand up here.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a resident coming in, there's still a couple things on here that are, don't really answer some questions that I may have if I walked in off the street to get this policy. So one being, in most cases, the township will, so on number 5.
Is this the one we sent out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in most cases, the township will require that petitions contain at least 51% of the property owners. What's in most cases?
No, it has to be at least.
I know, but that's
what it
I'm
says.
reading what it says in most cases. So I walk off with this petition, I think maybe most cases is my case. I come back in and I find out I didn't meet the criteria.
I'll give you an example. We have one commercial area that wants to, well, it's Office Park Drive, that several of the individuals want it paved. They can get 51, let's say they can get 51% of the lineal feet. Doesn't mean it's 51% of the people that own property along there, but it's 51%. So they may not need to get 51% of the owners of the property. They just need 51% of lineal feet because it's commercial, and the lineal feet is what the state requires, right?
Well, yeah, and I could think of the opposite example too. I mean, if you had one property owner that had a majority of the road, let's say they had 51% of the road, and you had 10 residences that didn't have it, you might change. You might want more. You might change your requirements at that point in time. But I do see your point. I mean, we
tried to leave wiggle room.
I don't want to say always. Again, we've come up with one example that already would cause us potentially to change the 51%. But let me see if I can, along with adding a higher percentage for being recommended, let me see if I can change that or get more specific on that. I'm not promising anything for Thursday, but let me come up with something.
Okay,
So,
go ahead, Mr.
So, yeah, I mean, it seems like we're either saying, you need 51% or something, more than 50% of linear feet, or residents. I mean, something like that. It should be, shouldn't be that hard, I wouldn't think. Maybe you have to discern between commercial versus residential or
Well,
something.
and here's where we get a little bit of the disconnect, is because the statute, when it talks about petitions, talks about linear frontage, but we've never done a linear frontage assessment. And so we're always making that conversion from linear frontage over to units, because that's, most people prefer to be just on a per lot basis. And so that's the scenario that we'll have to think about, whether or not we can pin ourselves down to 51% linear frontage, because we may want to shift gears at some point.
I really don't want to go based on lineal footage, but
I have to give
anybody who
some
lives on
clear,
a corner
we
does.
gotta have some clear thing. And then
Yeah.
one last point is, the very last point of this is that it says compliance is is with the Board of Trustees. Is that standard language in all of our policies?
Where are you reading that?
Oh, a delegation of authority?
Your delegation of authority.
I can't, I don't know the answer to that. I did not.
It seemed a little,
It was,
I haven't read that in the other policies, I guess is my point.
Management and administrative responsibility for ensuring compliance.
Which number is that?
Delegation of authority, last part.
you know, it's interesting though, when I think about this policy compared to other policies you may not, they may be out there and they may be being complied with or not, and you wouldn't know necessarily, but this, you're involved in almost every step of this process. Once this pops up on your agenda for consideration in a public hearing, you're going to be reviewing the process, how it began and where you are in the beginning and how you move forward with it. So I don't know if it has to do with just your intense involvement in this as a policy or not, but
It's rather redundant, though.
yeah.
That's there for a reason.
Well, if you want it out,
The thing
take
is
it out.
that, you know, if we're not following this and all of a sudden somebody at the front counter is the one telling them how the roads are done, we're not, you know, I don't know who's responsible for that.
Yeah, my question would be then, you know, do we have to meet when we decide that people are not complying? And then figure out if we're gonna, you know, work to bring them into compliance, or if we're gonna let it go, or, just, you know, that just sets us up for a series of
one
more
the-
discussions.
Yeah. This policy's kind of, I mean, there's some policies that are staff, right? And there's some policies that are board.
Yeah.
This one kind of is a little bit of both, because we're saying that the board's going to act in this manner, and the staff is going to also act in a certain manner, right?
It is, but when you started out the discussion with this, and this is true, we all have to be lockstep on this. So one thing we don't want is misinformation at any level.
Right. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, Trustee Mansour brought up an interesting point, and that's one of the things that I have been concerned about, is his question. His question is this on any other policy? And I have said all along that our policy sound good in theory, but in practice, they never bring anything back to the board. So therefore, if someone committed, I don't want to use the word illegal act, I guess in this case,
Or violates the policy?
It violate the policy. There's nowhere it says that a discussion comes to the board, or comes to the board for discussion. So this is good that it comes back. All our policies should say there should be some kind of board discussion, okay, regardless who violates what.
Mr. Massey's brought that up to me a couple of times, that the policies that we have, what are the teeth in them?
Right.
Because if a board member violates those policies, oh well, you know, but, so it's probably something that, you know, that this actually says that the board's in charge of enforcing this thing. I don't know.
Yes.
I know you would like to see even on the credit card policy that.
Absolutely.
That's something that it comes back to the board for discussion. So I don't know if that helps with that or not.
In my opinion, it does,
Okay.
Supervisor.
All right.
We'll have to see how it operationalizes.
All right. Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I had another question on item number 4. And I know
Is this the new one or?
no, this is on.
Because we redid the
Yeah,
number.
the current
Okay,
one.
okay.
This came in on the back.
No, Mr. Laddie sent out the new one, but here.
Okay, item 4. Okay, it's still in there.
Okay, all right.
And I know it's kind of a hard issue to say, but the last line on mine, but let's see. It says, and the cost will be spread over 10 years, and of course, generally it could be 10 years,
Yeah.
but we just had a 5-year one.
You're right.
And we've got, so I don't know, I know you can't, I just want to know.
We had a long discussion.
I bet you did. I bet you did. So,
And that 10 years, we settled on that 10 years because again, we
but it
covered-
says may be spread over, so I think that's how you got out of it, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we can't always go with 10 because technically the county road commission is going to tell us how many years.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
And I don't know if you want to change it or just leave it may be, but I just want. I'm sure you know.
We realize that is not perfect language, but we believe that's the most accurate language
At this point,
available.
okay.
Right.
All right.
That's going to be our standard, and if it's less or more, that'll be the exception.
Yep.
Right, but I mean, if I come in and say, well, I want 10 years, no, you can't get 10 years, you're only getting 5,
Yep.
we'll be able to do it because we're gonna say it's the county that's actually telling us that, not us,
And the
right?
bonding official, if we bond it.
Yep.
Well, yeah, well, the bonding official goes from what the county tells us, okay?
Right.
Yep.
Because if they don't have the verbiage, they can't sell the bond unless the county says, okay, it's 10 years or it's 5 years.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure that was clear.
Yep.
Anything else on that?
I'd like to add,
Yep.
I'd like to propose another agenda item for our Thursday meeting. And this would be to formalize our Parks and Rec strategy.
Support.
I think that, you know, we've had some discussion, and I'd prefer to let it move forward a little bit on its own to see where we get, but
Well, we've had numerous discussions about this, and you know, some of the board members have taken time with staff to go out and to kind of review what's going on, particularly at Creasy Park. And, you know, I'm not sure that anything has really changed to satisfy, you know, the direction this board wants to go with parks, and so I want to get something on the agenda to,
well, I'm trying to work something that I think would be beneficial for us at this point, but
we have a time frame, I guess, is the kind of.
I thought we were gonna do a resolution to pull the park out.
We
That's
can
something
talk
we
about it.
talked about, or?
This week.
I think we've had some communication on that, but
Well, I think, well, there are, again, where you end up strategy-wise on Parks and Rec is obviously a timeline that you're in charge of setting, and you can set it however you want. And one thing that I would suggest to you is that maybe you would want Mr. Lehman involved in that discussion as it occurs, but that's all I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything has occurred so far without Mr. Lehman having some
I've had a few
input.
meetings apart from the board that I'm seeing how things actually resolve, but I really don't want to go into the detail of those right now, other than to say that I'm hoping that we're able to get some kind of favorable resolution, or not resolution, but favorable direction. But if we don't want to wait for that, then I guess that's up to the board.
Yes, if
There
there's.
was a motion of support, Mr. Chairman, I don't know, unless they are withdrawing or it was just a,
So I guess it's, the issue is here is that we've had something dangling out for a while, and I know a lot of people have been spending time and effort on it, and meeting with people outside of the board and other partners. The question is, you know, here we are in the middle of November, and as we come toward the budget end of this thing, I think we owe it to be able to, you know, make sure that what we want to do is reflected.
Well,
So-
I've said that I'm working on it. I guess if we want to skip that and do something here and do something Thursday, I guess that's up to the board. We've done a motion, and
Is this?
we don't generally vote on motions
No.
on Tuesdays
No.
anyways. And this,
Well,
and
this-
actually,
this
we
is-
also have Mr. Massey, who I know in the past has said we aren't adding items at the last minute.
Well,
So-
that's why we're talking about it at the committee of the whole.
Yes.
Attorney Laddie, is this something that we can discuss in executive session?
Well, I've sent you written correspondence on this topic, You want to talk about that in executive session right now?
Yes.
Is there a motion to, now you have a motion on the table, do you want to?
I'll support it.
Oh, well, the motion, again, that's why I asked if it was an official motion, because the motion was to discuss it on Thursday. If they withdraw their motion, then they can make a fresh
I
one.
made a request to add a topic to the agenda. I don't think that was actually a motionable action.
Mr. Adkins supported it, that's why I asked if it was a casual statement or...
It was just casual to show my
Okay.
fellow trustee a little bit of,
We can add it to the agenda, but I would appreciate having an executive session on it.
Let's, then since it was,
I'll add it to the agenda for Thursday.
well, no, I don't think, I think that they're saying that they would prefer to have an executive session now and hold
Okay.
off on that request.
yes.
Okay.
So we need a
A motion. to go
motion in
into
a second
executive
and then a roll call vote.
At the end of this meeting or now, or?
session. I think we're.
We're at the end,
At
right?
the end of the meeting. I will,
Okay.
if Mr. Thomas is making the motion to go into executive session, I will support it to discuss ongoing matters with
attorney
Parks and
opinion.
Rec.
Yeah,
Pardon
attorney-
me?
Rent
So
attorney
rent
opinion.
opinion.
Okay.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yeah.
Mr. Massey? Myself, yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So they're changing.
I have a little bit of those.
They're not 13 instead of 14.
Although you all have microphones in your